In this video, we're going to talk about how to find X and Y-intercepts, both given a graph and from an equation. And of course, we're going to go through the big overview so that you can see where we are in the scope of this unit. Throughout this unit, again, we are writing equations of lines given a slope and a point, 2 points in a graph. And then we're kind of going backwards where given a graph, we're finding the slope and a point, we're finding 2 points that are solutions on the graph, and we are finding its graph. And today we are working towards finding 2 points that are solutions and on the graph, and we are working on finding the graph, although we're not going to get completely through with that in this video. Let's begin by finding the X and Y intercepts on a graph. When you look at this graph over here, this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. Remember, the x-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. And that would be right here. And that point is 7, 0. In fact, all x-intercepts have a y that is 0. That's what puts them on the x-axis if they have a y of 0. This is the y-intercept, and it has an x that is 0. And that's what puts it on the y-axis, is because it has an x of 0. So keep this in mind when we go to finding the x and y-intercepts from an equation, that the x-intercept has a y of 0. That's what puts it on the x-axis. And the y-intercept has an x that is 0, that's what puts it on the y-axis. Let's move on to finding the x and y-intercepts from an equation. Find the x and y-intercept of the line which has the equation 4x plus 7y equals 28. You'll remember from the previous slide that the x-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. What puts it on the x-axis is the fact that the y is 0. We can use that fact and the equation to figure out what x is. So 4x, put the 0 where the y is, equals 28. Of course, 7 times 0 is 0. I could move the 0 to the other side and subtract it, but hopefully you already can see that that's going to be 4x equals 28. And then we divide by both sides by 4, so x equals 7. So up here in this point, once you get here, that's not your final answer. The x-intercept is a point. So we want to put it back with its partner, who is 0. That on this graph actually happens to be 4x plus 7y equals 28, the same one that we used on the previous example. This point is actually 7, 0. That's the x-intercept. To find the y-intercept, the x is 0. So we want to find the y that is paired with an input of 0. 4 times 0 plus 7y equals 28. Again, that's just 0. I can move it over to the other side, but hopefully you just know that that'll end up being 28. And then divide both sides by 7. So the y-intercept is 4. And again, do not leave it like this. Put it back in a point with the x being 0. That's my x-intercept, that's my y-intercept. Let's do another example. Find the x and y-intercept of the line which has an equation y equals negative 4x plus 9. On the previous example, the equation was in standard form, which is actually pretty nice for finding the x and y-intercepts. This one is in slope-intercept form. So we can already tell what the y-intercept is going to be, but we're going to use this same method to figure it out. The x-intercept is a little bit more of a mystery. So same idea though. we're going to put 0 for the y if we want to find the x-intercept, because remember, on the x-axis, y is 0. So I'm going to put 0 where the y is. I'm going to move the 9 over to the other side and make it the opposite sign. Combine like terms. And then divide by -4. I gotta squeeze it in here. Whew. I made it. The x-intercept, the two negatives would cancel themselves out, so the x-intercept is 9/4, comma 0. And remember, do not leave it as x equals 9/4. Put it back into a point with y as the 0. And 9/4 is 2 1/4, and you can see I actually graphed y equals -4x plus 9 here, and you can see that's 2 1/4. This is one where it would be really hard to figure out exactly what point that is from the graph, so it's nice that we have the equation to help us. The y-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. Now, you probably already know, because this is slope-intercept form, that plus 9 is the y-intercept. But let's go ahead and put the 0 in for x just to see that, okay? So y equals -4 times 0 plus 9. That would be y equals 0 plus 9. So y equals 9 when x is 0. And sure enough, we get the same answer as we deduced from the fact that this was in slope-intercept form, and we also can see it on the graph here. That's 0, 9. A couple of key things to remember here is that when you find what x equals and what y equals, don't lose track of your purpose. Boy, that'll preach. In life, you might be bogged down in life and you lose track of your purpose. Go back to what you're trying to accomplish with your life. In math, you're trying to find two separate points with the 0 as the other part of the coordinate. They do not go together into one point. We are trying to find two separate points. Number 2, they are not the slope. We don't put the y over the x. There is kind of a little trick to finding the slope of that line using the intercepts, but they are not the slope. And number 3, I wrote it all out here because I wanted you to see it in print. These are not the x and the y. So a lot of times when students solve these problems, they think that they have found the x, like there's only one, and they have found the y, like it's the only one. Just like it's not the Oklahoma State University, because there are a lot of Oklahoma universities. This is not the x and the y. There are many x's and y's that are solutions to this equation, so be specific in your mathematical discourse in what you say. You are finding the x-intercept and the y-intercept. There's only one x-intercept on these linear equations, and there's only one y-intercept. But it's not the x and the y. It's a small change in words, but it's a big difference in meaning. So hopefully now you have some kind of idea about how to find x and y-intercepts from a graph and from an equation.